Welcome back to the Massachusetts Bay Colony, which is a part of the New England colonies. Today, I'm going to process and explain this information again. Let's go back and revisit our learning targets. Please read these with me. I can share accurate information about the major individuals and groups responsible for the founding of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. I can explain the early democratic ideas and practices in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Now let's review our essential vocabulary. Please repeat them after me. Emigrated, emigrated. Colony, colony. Colonist, colonist. Geography, geography. Dense, dense. Harbor, harbor. Grant, grant. Settle, settle. Government, government. Representatives, representatives. Democracy, democracy. Democratic, democratic. Majority rules, majority rules. Ballot system, ballot system. Founding, founding. Puritan, Puritans. Religion, religion. Persecuted, persecuted. Economy, economy. Import, import. Export, export. Industry, industry. Lumbering, lumbering. Okay, so we're going to start off with the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and I'm going to add the Massachusetts Bay Colony's seal that they had created in the 1700s. We're going to start off with the geographic features. Say that with me. Geographic features. So the geographic feature for the Massachusetts Bay Colony is they had natural harbors. Read this with me. Natural harbors. They had natural harbors all along the coast of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. In addition, they had dense forests. Read that with me. Dense forest. They had dense forests, so they had a lot of trees. They also had rocky soil. Read this with me. Rocky soil. They had harsh winters. Read this with me. Harsh winters. So their winters were harsh. It was very, very cold. Because their winters were so cold, it caused dead insects. Read this with me. Dead insects. With dead insects, they had less diseases. Read that with me. Less diseases. So less insects were spreading diseases, which made people lived longer. Read this with me. People lived longer. Awesome. Now let's go over to our reason for founding. Say reason for founding. Reason for founding. So, the reason that the Massachusetts Bay Colony is people emigrated from Great Britain and England, and they immigrated to the Massachusetts Bay Colony. So when you emigrate, you're leaving a country, and immigrate is to come. They also sailed across the Atlantic Ocean. Say that with me. The Atlantic Ocean. When they sailed across the Atlantic Ocean, they immigrated into the Massachusetts Bay Colony. One of the main reasons why they landed in the Massachusetts Bay Colony was for religious freedom. Say religious freedom. Religious freedom. And when they were in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, they built churches. Read that with me. Built churches. And they also had education. Say that with me. Education. Now, the Massachusetts Bay Colony was founded in 1630 with 1,000 people. Read this with me. 1630, 1,000 people. Then, 10 years later, in 1640, they had 20,000 people. Read this with me. 1640, 20,000 people. You can see in our photo how the Massachusetts Bay Colony grew over time. The people who lived in the Massachusetts Bay Colony were called Puritans. Read this with me. Puritans. Puritans have a pure form of religion. Read that with me. pure form of religion. These Puritans settled in Boston. Read this with me. Boston. They settled in Boston because Boston had good food and water. Read this with me. Boston had good food and water. And Boston was known as their town common. Read that with me. Town common. John Winthrop was the founder of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and John Winthrop was given money for his journey and for food. What I would like for you to do is turn and talk to your neighbor and talk to your neighbor about the difference between emigrate and immigrate. Heads together. Okay, we are going to move on to government. Say government. Government. So, they had town meetings. Say town meetings. Town meetings. In their town meetings, they would have 2 representatives. Read that with me. 2 representatives. Now, the Massachusetts Bay Colony had a democracy. Say democracy. Democracy. With their democracy, that means they had a democratic government. They believed in majority rules. Read that with me. Majority rules. With majority rules, they would meet together in the town hall and they would make decisions on important ideas. So they would meet in their town hall. Read this with me. Town hall. Town hall. Now, they would meet with their majority rule to make these decisions, and they had the first ballot system. Read this with me. First ballot system. So the ballot system was used to vote, but only men were allowed to vote. Read this with me. Men voted. But it had to be, the men who voted had to be church members. Read this with me. Church members and landowners. Read that with me. Landowners. The governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony was John Winthrop. Say John Winthrop. John Winthrop. John Winthrop was the founder of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, but he was also the governor 12 times. Read this word governor with me. Governor. He was the governor from the year 1630 to 1649. Read this with me. 1630 to 1649. Turn and talk to your neighbor, and talk to your neighbor about how John Winthrop impacted the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Heads together. Okay, we are going to move on to economy. Say economy. Economy. So in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, they made their money from small farms. Say small farms. Small farms. They also made their money from lumber. Say lumber. Lumber. And remember, lumber is the wood of a tree that is cut down. With the lumber, they had shipbuilding. Read this with me. Shipbuilding. So they lived by the Atlantic Ocean, so they had shipbuilding and they also had fishing. Read this with me. Fishing. So they also made tools that helped the boats and the ships that they made. So with their economy, they made tools. Read this with me. Made tools. Some of the tools they made were anchors. Say anchors. Anchors. An anchor is what holds down a boat in place. They also made nails. Say nails. Nails. On their small farms, they also grew crops. Read that with me. Crops. Now, they had many crops and they had many raw material that they made and goods. And so the Massachusetts Bay Colony traded with Great Britain. Say trade with me. Trade. So they traded with their mother country. Read this with me. Traded with mother country. Mother country was a nickname that was given to Great Britain because they emigrated from Great Britain into the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Some things that they traded with their mother country were lumber. Read this with me. Lumber. They also traded dried cod. Read this with me. Dried cod. They also traded fur. Read that with me. Fur. Now we're going to move into our last category, which is interesting facts. Read this with me. Interesting facts. We're going to start off with the schooling. Read this with me. School. So in school, boys learn reading, math, history, and science. Read this with me. Boys. Reading, math, history, science. In school, we're going to go over what the girls learn. The girls, they focus on reading, cooking, and sewing. Read that with me. Girls. Reading, cooking, sewing. So this is us focusing on what the boys and the girls learned at school. Now we're going to talk about their chores. Read this with me. Chores. So the chores for the boys, they had farming and caring for animals. Read that with me. Boys, farming, caring for animals. And the girls had cooking, cleaning, and sewing. Read this with me. Girls, cooking, cleaning, and sewing. Some more interesting facts is that Harvard was founded in 1636. Read that with me. Harvard, 1636. Harvard is the oldest college. Read that with me. Oldest college. In 1647, Harvard added a school of law. Read this with me. 1647, School of Law. So School of Law, that's where lawyers go to learn. Some more interesting facts is that the Massachusetts Bay Colony had the first school system. Read this with me. First school system. In addition, the Massachusetts Bay Colonies collected money for taxes. Read that with me. Collected money for taxes. Thank you so much.